Call the meeting to order at 6 o'clock. So our first item on the agenda is a public hearing regarding the site plan review application for waste management, proposing the PFAS treatment facility at Crossroads.
Is there anyone from the public that would like to speak?
So I guess we'll move on. So first, before we go back to the waste management application, we have to discuss the membership participation and discussion on applications. The lawyer did, our lawyer, Ben, thank you, did review our ordinances, and he got back to me with the requirements from a board member to participate in a vote on the application. If they miss a meeting, they have two options to proceed. They can either abstain from voting, or they can review all the submitted application materials and the tape of the meeting they missed, and then state on record at the next meeting, which would be this one, that the matter is considered that they have done this, and submit a letter into the record saying the same. And so I guess I need to ask Margaret and Charlotte, if this was something that you did you meet the requirements in order to vote on this?
I did not submit anything in writing,
No, okay.
so
And Margaret?
I did not submit anything in writing.
Okay. So from there.
so that means we can't discuss it or vote on it, right?
Well, this is what our ordinances say, is that you can't vote on it, you can't participate in the vote if you haven't met those requirements.
Did you close the public hearing?
Richard did.
She closed it at 6 o'clock,
Okay,
just as quick as it opened.
okay.
Oh, I see what you're asking, sorry. So in order to proceed, you review the, okay,
Passed over the minutes.
sorry. Okay, first we need to review and approve the minutes of the June 13th meeting.
I make a motion, we approve it. I'll second it.
Okay, all in favor?
I just reading.
We need a roll call vote, please.
Roll call vote. Okay. John,
Yes.
Chucky,
Yes.
Margaret,
Yes,
Charlotte?
I'm going to abstain since I didn't submit in writing that I wasn't here.
No, this, okay.
This is on the minutes. I wasn't here
Okay,
for
that's
this
your
minute, so.
okay. And I vote yes. So, the next item would be discussion and action on the site plan review application for waste management. So we have our findings of fact that we have to review. So the first item, Waste Management owns and operates the Crossroads landfill facility located at 357 Mercer Road in Norridgewock. The Crossroad facility includes, among other things, a recycling transport center, community transfer station, a former tire processing facility, a wood waste recycling program, a renewable energy power plant, and an active landfill license to dispose of non-hazardous waste. The Crossroads facility accepts three primary waste materials: special waste, municipal solid waste, and construction and demolition debris.
Are we going to vote on each one of these
Yes.
individually?
Yes. Does anybody make a motion to accept?
I'll second.
Any discussion? Vote? Is it a roll call vote again?
Everything's gonna be roll call.
Everything's gonna be roll call. Okay, John,
Yes.
Chucky,
Yes.
I vote yes. On to the next item. Crossroads generates and disposes of approximately 1,500 tons of waste per day on average. This disposal generates about 25 million gallons of leachate per year. The leachate is currently stored in a 948,000 gallon above ground steel storage tank. It's then transferred to tanker trucks to be hauled off site for treatment. Leachate often contains PFAS and other contaminants. Again, I need a motion to accept.
I make a motion to accept. I'll second it.
Any discussion? Vote. Okay, John?
Yes.
Gene, I'm happy to provide just a tiny little bit of guidance if it may help. So instead of, I think you're going about this the absolute right way, and I'm sorry to interrupt. Like you explained, these are draft findings, and the board should carefully review all of them to make sure they meet your reasoning on the application. With that said, though, I don't think there's no technical requirement that you have a roll call vote on every single item. You are certainly free to do that, and you are free to read every single one into the record. But what you're also free to do is to move through them one by one, as you're doing, making sure that no member of the board has any proposed changes that they feel are necessary to that finding of fact. You move all the way to the bottom, and then if you have found that there are no changes necessary throughout, you can vote to accept them as written, or alternatively, if there are changes that you feel are necessary, then you can accept those as amended. And I'm of course happy to make any changes. I have the Word version in front of me in case that's necessary, but don't let me get in the way of a good time. If you'd like to read every single one into the record, that's fine also, but just wanted to provide an alternative if that's something you'd like to do.
Okay, so I can read down through them and do the vote at the end of it. Right?
Yep,
If-
I think you can read through all of them. It's not technically necessary that you read every single one of them into the record. If that's typically how you do things, then certainly continue. But it is a public record. It's available to everybody. What I'd suggest instead is you just go through 3, 4, 5, etc. Pause to make sure nobody on the board has any changes, and certainly you have the applicant here if they feel that something that's suggested is incorrect or inaccurate.
Yeah, customarily, we don't vote on the findings of fact, we vote on the conclusions.
Okay,
And so that's
I misunderstood
the
that.
review criteria.
Okay,
Each of the ordinances. Yeah.
Richard, could I get a copy of that? I haven't been to the post office and Lisa's been gone and.
Right. So thank you for pointing that out, Richard. It's my first time with this board. So Gene, what we're talking about is on pages 1 through 2, you have 13 findings of fact. And then I do agree that you need separate votes on each conclusion, which is numbers 1 through 18.
okay. So Richard, do you want me to read the facts finding part of it, or,
I think that if everybody's had the opportunity to review it, you could pass over,
okay,
unless anybody had any questions specific.
okay. All right, does anybody have any questions on the fact finding portion? Okay, so we can proceed to the conclusions. Okay. So number 1, the application is complete and application escrow fees have been paid. Based on the application materials submitted by Waste Management and the planning board's review of the same, the planning board determined that this standard is met by vote on June 13th, 2024. Waste Management was charged the escrow fee of $1,000 under section 9D of the ordinance, which was paid prior to June 13th, 2024. Motion to accept.
I make a motion to accept number one.
I'll second.
Any
Okay,
discussion?
when you're saying number one, is that on page 7?
That's on page 3. And this is gonna be a roll call vote, right, Ben? This,
Yes, a roll call vote because you do have a remote participant. Please, thank you.
Yes,
John, Chucky,
Yes.
Jean, yes.
thank you.
Number 2, the proposal conforms to all the applicable provisions of this ordinance. Based on the application materials submitted by Waste Management, applicant testimony, public comments and testimony and other related materials on file in the record of the planning board proceedings, including without limitation, Waste Management's written application narrative by SCS engineers dated June 2024, the planning board determined that this standard is met.
Make a motion to accept.
I'll second it.
Any discussion? John?
No?
John?
Yes.
Yeah.
Chucky? No, Jean.
Oh, my God.
Number 3, the proposed activity will not cause unreasonable soil erosion or a reduction in the land's capacity to hold water so that an unsound or unhealthy condition results as per the state of Maine Department of Environmental Protection's Maine DEP, Maine Erosion and Sediment Best Control Best Management Practices Manual in force at the time of the permit's approval. Based on the application materials submitted by Waste Management, applicant testimony, public comments and testimony and other related materials on file in the record of the planning board proceedings, including without limitation, the submitted erosion and sediment control plan, appendix F of Waste Management's written submission, and section 4.3 of Waste Management's written application narrative, the planning board determined that this standard is met.
I make a motion to accept 3.
I'll second it.
Okay, any discussion? John,
Yes.
Chucky? Yes. Okay. Number 4, the proposed activity will not have an adverse impact on wetlands. Based on the application materials submitted by Waste Management, applicant testimony, public comments and testimony and other related materials on file in the record of the planning board proceedings, including without limitation, section 4.3 of Waste Management's written application narrative, as well as the fact that the LPTS will be located entirely outside of delineated wetland boundaries, the planning board determined that this standard is met.
Make a motion to accept 4.
I'll second it.
John?
Yes.
Chucky?
Yeah.
Yes. The proposed activity will not have an adverse impact on any water body such as a lake, pond, river, or stream. Based on the fact that the construction of the LPTS will not involve any activity within or adjacent to any lake, pond, river, stream, or other water body, the planning board determined that this standard is met.
I make a motion to accept.
I'll second it.
John?
Yes.
Chucky?
Yes.
Jean, yes. Number 6, the proposed activity will provide for adequate stormwater management. Based on the application materials submitted by Waste Management, applicant testimony, public comments and testimony and other related materials on file in the record of the planning board proceedings, including without limitation, the stormwater design calculations submitted by the applicant, appendix F, the planning board determined that this standard is met.
I'll make a motion to accept 6.
I'll second it.
Okay, John?
Yes.
Chucky?
Yes.
Jean, yes. 7, the proposed activity will provide for adequate sewage disposal. Based on the application materials submitted by Waste Management, applicant testimony, public comments and testimony and other related materials on file in the record of planning board proceedings, which show that the only septic and gray water generated by the project will be discharged to a permitted septic system located within the property boundaries. The planning board determined that this standard is met.
I'll make a motion to accept.
I'll second it.
John,
Yes,
Chucky?
Yes.
Jean, yes. Number 8, the proposed activity will not adversely impact any floodplain areas and will conform to the applicable requirements of the town of Norridgewock floodplain management ordinance. Based on the fact that the LPTS will not be located in any floodplain area, the planning board determined that this standard is not applicable.
I'll make a motion to accept, Dave.
I'll second it.
John?
Yes,
Chucky?
Yes.
Jean, yes. Number 9, the proposed activity will not result in air or water pollution. Based on the application materials submitted by Waste Management, applicant testimony, public comments and testimony, and other related materials on file in the record of the planning board proceedings, including without limitation, Waste Management's written application narrative at pages 10 and 11 and at Appendix E, the fact that all surface water generated by the LPTS will be collected and not discharged off-site, and the fact that the LPTS does not require any air licensing from the Maine Department of Environmental Protection, the planning board determined that this standard is met.
I'll make a motion to accept.
I'll second it.
John?
Yes,
Chucky?
Yes.
Jean? Yes. The proposed activity has sufficient water available for the current and foreseeable needs of the development. Based on the application materials submitted by Waste Management, applicant testimony, public comments and testimony, and other related materials on file in the record of the planning board proceedings, including without limitation, section 4.3 of Waste Management's written application narrative, which shows that a new water well will be installed to provide non-potable water for the LPTS. Planning board determined that this standard is met.
I'll make a motion to accept number 10.
I'll second it.
John?
Yes,
Chucky?
Yes.
Jean, yes. 11, the proposed activity will not alone or in conjunction with existing activities affect the quality or quantity of groundwater. Based on the application materials submitted by Waste Management, the supplemental documents submitted by Waste Management, applicant testimony, public comments and testimony, and other related materials on file in the record of the planning board proceedings, including without limitation, Appendix J to the project application, which depicts the composition and construction of the LPTS and which details that the LPTS has been designed to ensure that no PFAS-laden leachate will be discharged into the existing groundwater. The planning board determined that this standard is met.
I'll make a motion to accept 11.
I'll second it.
John?
Yes,
Chucky?
Yes.
Jean, yes. 12, the proposed activity will dispose of all solid waste in conformance with all local regulations, and the type and quantity of waste proposed to be sent to town facilities will not exceed their capacity. Based on the application materials submitted by Waste Management, the supplemental documents submitted by Waste Management, applicant testimony, public comments and testimony, and other related materials on file in the record of the planning board proceedings, the planning board determined that this standard is met.
I'll make a motion to accept.
I'll second it.
John?
Yes,
Chucky?
Yes.
Jean, yes. 13, the proposed activity will not have a significant detrimental effect on adjacent land uses or other properties which might be affected by waste, noise, glare, fumes, smoke, dust, odors, or their effects. Based on the application materials submitted by Waste Management, the supplemental documents submitted by Waste Management, applicant testimony, public comments and testimony, and other related materials on file in the record of the planning board proceedings, including without limitation, Waste Management's written application narrative at pages 11 and 12, the fact that the LPTS will be constructed in the interior of the Crossroads facility will be entirely surrounded by the existing landfill and will not generate any emissions or noise that are inconsistent with those already generated by the Crossroads facility at the present time. The planning board determined that this standard is met.
I'll make a motion to accept 13.
I'll second it.
John?
Yes,
Chucky?
Yes.
Jean, yes. 14, the proposed activity will not cause unreasonable highway or public road congestion or unsafe conditions with respect to the use of existing or proposed highways or roads. Based on the application materials submitted by Waste Management, the supplemental documents submitted by Waste Management, applicant testimony, public comments and testimony, and other related materials on file in the record of the planning board proceedings, including without limitation, Waste Management's application narrative at page 12, which details that after construction of the LPTS, no increase in traffic to the Crossroads facility will occur. The planning board determined that this standard has been met.
make a motion to accept. 14,
I'll second it.
John?
yes,
Chucky?
Yes.
Jean, yes. 15, proposed activity to the maximum extent possible will not have an adverse effect on the scenic or natural beauty of the area, aesthetics, historic sites, significant wildlife habitat identified by the Department of Inland Fisheries and Wildlife or the town of Norridgewock, or rare or irreplaceable natural areas or any public rights for physical or visual access to the shoreline. Based on the application materials submitted by Waste Management, the supplemental documents submitted by Waste Management, applicant testimony, public comments and testimony, and other related materials on file in the record of the planning board proceedings, including without limitation, the wetlands analysis of the project site drafted by Normando, did I say that right? Associates, Inc., Appendix D, and Waste Management's written application narrative at page 12, stating that the LPTS is to be constructed within an already investigated site area that does not pose any of the above stated risks, and also stating that the LPTS is located a minimum of 250 feet from any property boundaries and approximately 1,850 feet from the nearest residence. The planning board determined that the standard has been met.
I make a motion we accept 15.
I'll second it.
John,
Yes,
Chucky,
Yes.
Jean, yes. 16, the proposed activity conforms to all applicable requirements of the town shoreline zoning ordinance and all other local ordinances. Based on the fact that the LPTS will not be located in the shoreline area, per the statement of the code enforcement officer, the planning board determined that this standard is not applicable.
I'll make a motion to accept 16.
I'll second it.
John,
Yes,
Chucky,
Yes.
Jean, yes. 17, the proposed activity will not increase a great pond's phosphorus concentration if the development is within the watershed of a great pond. Based on the fact that the LPTS will not be located within the watershed of a great pond, the planning board determined that this standard is not applicable.
I make a motion we accept 17.
I'll second that.
John,
Yes,
Chucky,
Yeah.
Jean, yes.
I'm running out of ink.
Hey, the town has the capacity to provide fire and rescue services to the proposed development. Based on the application materials submitted by Waste Management, the supplemental documents submitted by Waste Management, applicant testimony, public comments and testimony, and other related materials on file in the record of the planning board proceedings, including without limitation, Waste Management's written application narrative at page 13 of its application materials, that the LPTS does not create any actual expansion of the scope or scale of the Crossroads facility. The planning board determined that this standard is met.
I'll make a motion to accept 18.
Second it. No.
John,
Yes,
Chucky,
Yes.
Jean, yes. Decision, based on the above findings of fact and conclusions, the written application and supporting materials and information submitted and testimony and evidence submitted at the planning board meetings, a majority of planning board members I voted in favor of granting the site plan approval for the reasons set forth herein, subject to the following conditions of approval. Number one, this approval is dependent upon and limited to the proposals and plans contained in the site plan application and supporting documents submitted and affirmed by the owner and applicant, Waste Management Disposal Services. Any variation from the plans, proposals, and supporting documents, except de minimis changes as determined by the code enforcement officer that do not affect approval standards, is subject to the review and approval of the planning board prior to implementation. 2, this approval is conditioned on Waste Management obtaining all necessary federal, state, or local permits and other approvals before Waste Management commences any land use activity at the project site pursuant to this approval. This includes, but is not limited to, DEP approval of a solid waste processing facility license for the BPF under Chapter 409 and any necessary permitting from the town of Norridgewock Code Enforcement Officer for the proposed on-site septic system. If the DEP's or any other agency's conditions of approval modify the waste management submittals described in the findings of fact above or in any way impact the town's substantive review criteria, Waste Management must return to the planning board for review and approval of an amended site plan. 3, the site plan approval shall expire and become null and void unless a substantial start of construction as determined by the code enforcement officer begins within 1 year from the date of this approval. Pursuant to section 9M of the Norridgewock Site Plan Review Ordinance, any person aggrieved by this decision may appeal to the Norridgewock Board of Appeals pursuant to the procedures set forth in the town's Board of Appeals ordinance as applicable within 30 days of the date of this decision.
So Jean, I think at this point, what's in order is simply a motion either to approve or deny. I assume it's gonna be a motion to approve the application, subject to the 3 conditions of approval that you've just stated.
Okay,
I make a motion to accept,
The 3,
yeah, the 3.
Conditions.
the document with the conditions of the application with the conditions of approval and to authorize me to sign it.
Yes,
I'll second
Yeah,
that.
that.
Okay, yeah.
John,
yes,
Chucky,
Yes, we had no banana.
yes. Okay,
That concludes the review of waste management application. You have been approved with the conditions that were just accepted. We will formalize and finalize that document hopefully tomorrow, once council finalizes and the chair can sign it, we will issue that. You can get to the code enforcement officer to secure your actual permit to proceed. And your escrow will be refunded within 45 days, or as soon as I get a bill from council to pay, and then we'll get that back to you.
thank you.
Thank you.
okay, new business.
All set with me, Richard?
I think we are. Thank you.
Okay, all right. Have a good evening, everyone.
Our new business, is just, the first item is discussion and action on floodplain application for Anthony Carter and Janice Carter, proposing 1 dwelling and 1 accessory building at 12 and 14 River Road, map 34, lot 9. So I can read through the findings of fact and then the conclusion and then vote.
I would probably wait just a second and allow applicant's agent to present
present
the
their-
project
okay.
overview, because you've got the floodplain, you've got the shoreline, which is what's the ordinance that you folks will be reviewing. And then the site plan will actually be reviewed by
By the code enforcement officer. Yeah.
just as a regular dwelling.
So good evening, my name is Stephen Devoli, I'm here with Chris Boudet, we are with Wentworth Partners and Associates, an engineering office right out of Skowhegan, Maine. We are representing the Carters here for their lot across the river, next to the bridge. We have an application that we're basically wanting to turn that lot into a permanent residence is their ultimate goal. And in doing so, they thought it was, in their minds, it was just a permit application, not quite understanding how a shoreline zone affects a permit application. So we are here now with the permit application based on the shoreline zoning requirements, the floodplain requirements, and then if there were any floodplain management requirements on top of that. So we in making our determination and able to assist the Carters, we surveyed the property, so we had proper elevations. We reviewed that survey data over the required firm maps, the FEMA maps, to make sure, to see where they sat within a shoreline zone as well as within the floodplain itself. And I think using that information, then talking to the town manager, talking and understanding what the zoning requirement, other zoning requirements are in the town, and of course there are any, so that triggered us to just look at standards used by the National Fire Prevention Agency for setbacks from property lines and buffer zones, that kind of thing. We put together a site plan that would allow them to construct based on pending approval tonight, and then, of course, approval by the code enforcement officer for the regular permitting side of things. So the biggest determinations were just the firm maps, if you're, I'm sure you're all familiar with these. So this is the firm map that represents where our lot is. And Chris, you're probably gonna be better off than me, but yeah, I count on the younger eyes. So there's a great- yeah, so let's see right here.
This is X right here.
So the floodplain maps indicate, so this is the Kennebec River. What you're seeing here that has the hatch area on it represents what we call the floodway. That is where the water is moving. And then the floodplain is where the water, we had those levels where the water actually will fill in these basins, but not, it's not really moving water at that stage, but it's certainly is water areas that get wet. And because this is considered a zone A or is always considered a zone A. The A means that this is gonna absolutely flood. That's pretty much what the A means. And then once they started actually putting elevations to those elevations, they started, those areas that have elevations related to them are now called flood zone AE. So this Kennebec River is marked off as an AE zone for those floodplains. And then that AE zone changes in elevation, as you can imagine, because as the river is going up, those floodplains at higher elevations have one set of elevations, and then they work their way down the river. So our elevation for where our property sits, the floodplain elevation is 177. As determined by FEMA and put on the firm maps. So the 177 means that that would be the base elevation for the finished first floor of a residence or a structure, the occupiable finished first floor, which basically says that the water level gets to 176. We've had instances where the water level hit 176, and of course that was 1987 in this case here. The recent flood in December 19th, last year, we did not quite hit that level. We were darn close. My house flooded, but we didn't quite hit the same levels as 1987. So we never really made that mark again. Now, with FEMA maps, you also see a zone called Zone X. And right now, the property that we're talking about is in this Zone X. And the Zone X is related to the fact that FEMA's not quite sure if that's in the floodplain. It could be, it might not be. So they give it as, this is a potential area that will flood if that water hits that 176 mark. Remember, the floodplain elevation is 177, but it's that 176 mark that they're concerned about. And the reason that we have these zone X's in here is because based on the timeline of your map, and I heard you had mentioned something about this a little earlier in the conversation. When I started in engineering, our flood maps, which did not have elevations related to them, so the zone A, zone X, zone C, were based on our satellite data back in 1965 it started. So that plus or minus that they could be off at that time vertically was 10 meters. So you can imagine 30 feet of difference. That's how bad the site plans were at that time. FEMA is always trying to update these maps. But those maps, the updates are based on priorities and populations. Because it's an expensive endeavor done out of Texas. So this map here was done in 1976. And that, at that time frame, our plus or minus was about 1 meter. So the plus or minus here is 3 feet. So the reason for the zone X in this case is they're saying, we know we're at 177, but we're not sure if these properties in here are at 177 or not. And of course, that starts making sense because as we did our survey, we found that the property was all at about 180. So we are 3 feet above the floodplain, the required floodplain elevation, and of course 4 feet above where the water would then be. So this entire property, which is in, I should say, the entire area where he's where the Carters are thinking about, building their house or hoping to build their house, are technically on this map in zone X, but once you do a real survey, I can certify that they're not even in a zone X. They do not meet any of the floodplain requirements. So, so once again, we are definitely within the shoreland zone being the 250 feet from the major river in this case. We definitely have, potential for wetland area in the back. Back in this area here, there's actually cat of nine tails growing, so we're seeing plants that are consistent with wetlands, all behind here. But that wetland elevation is about 170. And so that's an area that we're not gonna touch, and then we put our 25-foot setback on that wetland. So this would be an area that we call the no work zone. They can't be in that area, and they are not. This is where their grade lines really start to increase to get them up to the plane that they're at now. This area, of course, is where we just talked about. This is up at about 180, 180.2. And that is where we're proposing this. We're proposing a structure and hopefully a residence at some time. That's their ultimate goal. We do want to point out that the right of way here, which is River Road, it's a 66-foot wide right of way, 4-rod road. Sorry, 3-rod road, no, 4-rod road. Yes, 4-rod road, 66 foot. The lot in question is this lot. They also own the lot across the street that is technically a different tax map lot. And that is not part of this application. Their ultimate goals here, again, have a full residence. At this time, they're just talking about their 14 by 36. They have a what do you call it, pre-manufactured building that they brought in, so they're hoping to have that set. We have that set back, well, technically, we set it back 30 feet from the right of way of the road, not just the road in this case. So here's the center line of the road. We have 33 feet back from the center line of the road is actually the property line. And then we're set back another 30 feet from that, just because we feel that's for the speed of the road and for the neighborhood, that's where we should be starting in the construction. They do also have a shed that they'd like to put on at this time too. This is a gardening shed. And then, of course, within the plans, we started putting some buffer zones in there. And on the plans, you also see the setbacks that we have from the property lines. So we feel that this meets the criteria of what the town is kind of hoping for in terms of maybe what a residential structure would look like. I do have a caution here. I think this is the multifamily unit right beside them here. This multifamily doesn't really have a lot of room to park. So I am concerned that if we start putting a buffer zone between the two properties, because right now the residents that live here, some of them park on their property. So I cautioned about putting, having the buffer zone all the way down here, because we want to have a buffer zone between the two properties eventually. So planting trees, she was talking about cherry trees in there. But I caution it at the very bottom. I don't think it's gonna happen because these people don't have a place to park otherwise. They have a couple of cars that sit in this area here. So I hope the planning will understand that we're trying not to knock neighbors out either. So that's the goal. If you have any questions, direct them to Chris. And I hope that might have answered your question from earlier, and let me continue with that if you don't mind. I like talking. So FEMA does update these maps every once in a while, and it's based on data, and it's also based on population. So every time Maine gets on the queue, we get a storm in Houston, Texas, and all that money gets spent down there, because FEMA is funded by federal money. So that money gets fed. When Sandy hit, Sandy took our priority. When the storms hit Boston and Quincy, that area got hit. That area got the FEMA money to update the maps. Of course, now with the data, we are the drones and the satellite imagery, we can take this down to a millimeter now instead of a meter. So you're gonna see the maps become a lot more accurate. Of course, and the way they're doing the mapping now, they can shoot through the vegetation, which allows them to do the maps year round now as well. So hopefully Maine's on the list, because again, this costs a lot of people a lot of money when they're in a flood zone.
And I think the article was actually for a lot of the southern states, because they've been having a massive amount of flooding. Okay, granted, we may see a flood every 10 years or something like that. This past year was unusual. But I think it was because in the southern states, they have been flooded and flooded and flooded. I mean, every storm.
I actually do bridges and culverts, that's what our company really focuses on. And yeah, it's been, since May 1st of last year has been absolutely crazy. And even 2 nights ago, Penobscot County, Piscataquis County had a bunch of wipeouts there. Like yesterday, it was Franklin County, and I bet you today we're gonna see, I already got some pictures of culverts that the water is pouring out underneath the culvert, which means the whole road is now in jeopardy, so. Just from the storm this afternoon.
Look at Livermore Fall area. That was really bad.
Yeah, that was a June storm last year, right?
Yeah.
And here's another one today, so.
Any questions?
Yes. May I? I would just like to know if the codes enforcement officer has gone over the application
Actually, we have a letter from him.
from him.
Yeah. I have reviewed the application submitted on behalf of Anthony and Janice Carter for proposed development at 12 and 14 River Road. Regulations require that applications be submitted to the town of Norridgewock site plan review ordinance, shoreline zoning ordinance, and floodplain management ordinance. I've reviewed the applications and the communication regarding the exclusion from floodplain regulation. I find the applications and materials submitted to be acceptable and complete.
Thank you.
And I'd like to thank the code enforcement officer, that I know that came in late, so he was able to go through that review and get that in front of you, so thank you very much.
Okay, so now the findings of fact.
Yes, on floodplain.
On the floodplain, yep. Do you want me to read them, these, or,
Yes, please, because they didn't go all electronically.
okay,
They were like,
oh, okay.
Yeah.
On July 1st, 2024, a complete application is filed with the town seeking to construct a dwelling on property located at 12 and 14 River Road and identified on town tax maps as map 34, lot 9. The property consists of 0.87 acres. As a part of the application, the applicant certifies that the top of the bottom floor would be 181.75 feet. The relevant property is located in flood zone X as identified on panel 16C of maps updated May 6, 1996. On July 11, 2024, the planning board met to deliberate on the application and approved the following. Planning board makes the following conclusions. Under certification by the applicant's agent, Wentworth Partners and Associates, the property is within a flood hazard zone, but the proposed dwelling is not located within the 100-year floodplain. Based upon the above review and conclusion, the written application and supporting materials and information submitted, testimony and evidence submitted at the planning board meeting, a majority of planning board members voted in favor of waiving review and granting the flood hazard development permit in accordance with Article 2 of the Town of Norridgewock floodplain management ordinance. Conditions of approval, none. Any person aggrieved by this decision may appeal to the Norridgewock Board of Appeals pursuant to the procedures set forth in the town's Board of Appeals ordinance as applicable within 45 days of the date of the issuance of this written order of decision. So we need a motion.
Now, is this floodplain or shoreline?
this is strictly floodplain, this application, which isn't an application. It's going to be a motion to accept the documents as the exclusionary factor for review on the floodplain.
Yeah.
Okay.
For what? You,
Chucky.
You need a second.
Mhm.
I'll second.
Okay. Roll call.
Everybody gets to vote on this, don't
Yeah.
they?
Yep. John,
Yes.
Chucky,
Yes.
Margaret,
yes,
Charlotte,
yes.
Jean, yes. Now on to the shoreline zoning. Okay. Findings of fact, on July 1st, 2024, complete app.
Sorry, this was a motion to deem the application complete.
I'll make a motion to deem the application complete.
I'll second it.
John,
Yes.
Chucky,
Yes.
okay,
Margaret,
yes,
Charlotte,
Yes.
Jean, yes. On July 1st, 2024, complete application was filed with the town seeking to construct a dwelling on property located at 12 and 14 River Road and identified on town tax maps at map 34, lot 9. The property consists of 0.87 acres. A portion of the relevant property is located within the shoreline zone as identified on town maps. The portion of the relevant property located within the shoreline zone is classified as limited commercial development. On July 11th, the planning board met to deliberate on the application and approve the following conclusions. The planning board makes the following conclusions. The proposed distance from the normal high water line to the proposed principal structure is approximately 145 feet. The proposed dimensions of the principal structure are 14 feet by 36 feet. The proposed development does not include any mineral extraction. The proposed development does not propose any timber harvesting or select cutting.
So this is where we.
Oh, you want to vote on each one?
Starting with number 2, the mineral is extraction. These are the
Okay.
steps that we do forward.
Okay. Number 2, the proposed development does not include any mineral extraction.
Make a motion to accept.
Second,
John,
Yes.
Chucky,
Yes.
Margaret,
yes,
Charlotte,
yes.
Jean, yes. Okay. Number 3, the proposed development does not propose any timber harvesting or select cutting.
I make a motion to accept that.
I'll second it.
John,
Yes.
Chucky,
Yes.
Margaret,
yes,
Charlotte,
Yes.
Jean, yes. Number 4, the proposed development will maintain safe and healthful conditions.
I make a motion that we accept number 4.
I'll second it.
John,
Yes.
Chucky,
Yes.
Margaret,
yes,
Jean, Charlotte,
Yes.
Jean, yes. Number 5, the proposed development will not result in water pollution, erosion, or sedimentation to surface waters.
Make a motion to accept.
Second,
John,
Yes.
Chucky,
Yes.
Margaret,
yes,
Charlotte,
yes.
Jean, yes. Number 6, the proposed development will adequately provide for the disposal of all wastewater.
Well, it's on town sewer.
It's on town
Yeah.
sewer. Mhm.
That makes it easy. All right, I make a motion that we accept number 6.
I'll second it.
John,
Yes.
Chucky,
Yeah.
Margaret,
yes,
Charlotte,
Yes.
Jean, yes. Number 7, the proposed development will not have an adverse impact on spawning grounds, fish, aquatic life, birds, or other wildlife habitat.
I make a motion that we accept number 7.
I'll second it.
John,
Yes.
Chucky,
Yeah.
Margaret,
yes,
Charlotte,
Yes.
Jean, yes. Number 8, the proposed development will conserve shore cover and visual and actual points of access to inland waters.
I make a motion to accept.
I'll second it.
John,
Yes.
Chucky,
Yes.
Margaret,
yes,
Charlotte,
Yes.
Jean, yes. The proposed development will protect archaeological and historic resources as designated in the comprehensive plan.
Make a motion to accept. Number 9.
I'll second it.
Well, okay. You
John?
seconded it.
Yes.
Chucky,
Yes.
Margaret,
yes,
Charlotte,
Yes.
Jean, yes. The proposed development will avoid problems associated with floodplain development and use.
Make a motion to accept.
I'll second it.
John,
Yes.
Chucky,
Yeah.
Margaret,
yes,
Charlotte,
Yes,
Jean, yes. Number 11, in accordance with Table 1 in the Town of Norridgewock Shoreland zoning ordinance, the permitting of principal structures to be used as a one or two family residential structure, including driveways, is to be reviewed and permitted under the authority of the code enforcement officer.
I make a motion we accept.
I'll second that.
John,
Yes.
Chucky,
Yes.
Margaret,
yes,
Charlotte,
yes,
Jean, yes. Number 12, in accordance with Table 1 in the Town of Norridgewock Shoreland zoning ordinance, there are no land uses proposed in the application that require planning board approval. Example, mineral extraction, commercial, industrial, multi-unit residential, campgrounds, marinas, etc.
motion to accept,
Oh, wait, I'll second it.
John,
Yes.
Chucky,
Yes.
Margaret,
yes,
Charlotte,
yes,
Jean, yes. Based upon the above review and conclusions, the written application, supporting materials and information submitted, testimony and evidence submitted at the planning board meeting, a majority of planning board members voted in favor of remanding the application to the code enforcement officer for review and permitting. Conditions of approval will be determined by the code enforcement officer. We need a motion to accept the document with these.
I will make a motion to accept this as complete and authorize the chairman of the board, or chair of the board, I'm sorry, Richard, to sign the letter.
John,
Yes.
Chucky,
Yes.
Margaret,
yes,
Charlotte,
Yes,
Jean, yes. Any person aggrieved by this decision may appeal to the Norridgewock Board of Appeals pursuant to the procedures set forth in the town's Board of Appeals ordinance as applicable within 45 days of the date of the issuance of this written order of decision.
And what this town's duty in terms of reviewing your application, because of their findings, it's now been remanded to the code enforcement officer. For final permitting. Not to speak for the code enforcement officer, but it appears as though you are one of the streamlined at this point in time. And we appreciate your work in gaining land use compliance with this property.
Any public comment? Any other business?
those FEMA net maps are neat online. I got that 1996 map online.
Yeah.
Well, you can see how just roughing that up a corner there,
Yeah,
but it's really, you know, again, they're using satellite imagery back then and it just wasn't good enough for, like
yeah,
I said, 3 meters, you know, that was basically what we're looking at, was 3 meters in that, at that time frame, so. Yeah, 10 feet.
So that's a lot. That's a
yeah,
lot.
yeah.
get an answer on other business.
Any other business? Then I'll adjourn the meeting.
Thank you, Margaret.
Thank you.